My husband had just left for a business trip when my 6-year-old daughter whispered, "Mommy, we have to run now." I asked, "What? Why?" She trembled and said, "Oh, we don't have time. We have to leave the house right now." I grabbed our bags and reached for the door, and that's when it happened. The old 2-story house in the Boston suburbs maintained an elegant exterior, but inside, traces of time remained here and there: the creaking floorboards in the entrance hall, the slight soot around the fireplace, and the worn indentations in the stair railings. All these details were precious to Sarah Thompson. "Lily, breakfast time," Sarah called from the kitchen while pouring orange juice into a glass. Sarah was tall with an artistic appearance. Her long brown hair was always loosely tied back, and her eyes reflected intelligence and warmth. "Mommy, the clouds in the sky are making funny shapes," 6-year-old Lily called out from the window. She was a child with an active imagination who could turn even the smallest observations into adventures. "Yes, they are. But we don't have time today. Your father is busy too." James came downstairs, holding his coffee cup. He was a man who always took care with his appearance. Tall and handsome, he showed a charming smile, especially to people related to his work. "I have an important business meeting this weekend. If it's successful, it'll be a big deal," James said as he stroked Lily's head. "My little princess, when Daddy comes back from his business trip, I'll bring you a wonderful present. Promise." Lily looked up at her father. "Of course." James winked at his daughter. Sarah quietly set the table, feeling a slight uneasiness about her husband's words. Recently, James seemed to be hiding something. There had been subtle changes in his attitude, especially during the 3 months since her mother had passed away. "How are the preparations for the new exhibition at the Oliver Museum?" James asked Sarah. "There's still so much to do," Sarah answered. "But it's an exhibition featuring female artists of the 20th century. It's a special project for me." Sarah's talent as a museum curator was widely recognized. Her passion for art had remained unchanged since childhood, and sometimes she prioritized work over family time. This occasionally became a source of James's discontent. "By the way, I got a call from Mother," James said casually. "She says she'll be visiting this weekend." Sarah inwardly sighed. Her mother-in-law, Margaret Thompson, was a typical upper-class woman who behaved courteously on the surface, but never tried to hide her excessive interference and attachment to her son. To Margaret, James was the perfect son, and Sarah was a daughter-in-law unworthy of him. "I see." Sarah feigned calmness. "Lily will be happy about that, I suppose." In reality, Lily also had complicated feelings about her relationship with her grandmother. Margaret's affection was conditional, given only when Lily behaved like a lady. After breakfast, when James left for work, the house became quiet. Sarah was sorting through her mother's belongings, thinking about what to do with the inheritance, which was substantial, though she hadn't made any specific plans yet. "Mommy, look at this." Lily came into her mother's office. In her small hands was an old photograph. "Oh, this is a picture of Grandma and me when we were young." Sarah gently took the photo. "Do you miss Grandma?" Lily nodded silently. "Grandma told me the truth." "What do you mean?" "It's a secret," Lily said with a mysterious expression. Sarah thought it was probably a product of a child's imagination. In the evening, Sarah received a phone call from James. "I've decided to leave early tomorrow morning. I need to prepare for the important business meeting." "I see," Sarah replied. A strange anxiety crossed her mind. During dinner, Lily was quieter than usual, looking out the window. Her expression had a concern that was unusual for a child. "What's wrong?" "Lily," Sarah touched her daughter's forehead. "I saw Daddy and Grandma having a secret phone call," Lily said in a small voice. "They thought I couldn't see them." Sarah was momentarily surprised by her daughter's words, but quickly remembered the richness of a child's imagination. "Daddy makes a lot of work calls. Now, it's bedtime." After putting Lily to bed, Sarah headed to her office to finish planning documents for the Art Foundation. However, she couldn't concentrate. Staring out into the darkness, she was overcome by an inexplicable anxiety. The next day, James left earlier than usual. While organizing museum materials, Sarah noticed Lily looking out the window. Tension ran through her small back, and she stood frozen by the windowsill, unlike the usually active 6-year-old. "Lily, what are you looking at?" Sarah approached her daughter. Lily turned slowly and stared at her mother's face. There was a deep concern in her eyes that was unchildlike. "I'm waiting for something to come." "What's coming?" Sarah asked with a smile. "I don't know, but Mommy." Lily paused for a moment. "Do you remember Grandpa's old basement?" Sarah stopped moving. The basement, supposedly used by Lily's great-grandfather, had already been sealed off when she purchased the house. She didn't remember mentioning its existence to her daughter. "Lily, where did you hear about that?" "I saw it in a dream. There's a secret room in the basement, a place to hide when bad people come." Sarah was impressed by her daughter's rich imagination, but also felt uneasy. The house's survey report had indeed mentioned an old servant's basement, but it was supposedly completely sealed off and inaccessible. Yes, old big houses had places like that, but they're not used anymore, Sarah explained gently. "Really?" Lily's voice was small. While preparing dinner in the kitchen, the phone rang, seeing the name displayed on the screen. Sarah hesitated for a moment. It was from her mother-in-law, Margaret. "Hello, Margaret." Sarah put on a bright voice. "Sarah, has James left yet?" There was an unusual tension in Margaret's voice. "Yes. He left early this morning. He should have arrived by now." "I see." After a brief silence, Margaret continued. "Let me know if you hear from him. I have an important matter to discuss." "Of course." "Is there a problem?" "No, nothing. Just checking." Margaret's voice suddenly grew cold. "And how is Lily doing?" "She's fine. A bit quiet, but I see. Children often understand more than adults think they do." There was something meaningful in Margaret's words. "I'll be in touch later." Right after hanging up, Sarah heard the sound of a car engine around the house. Looking out the window, she saw an unfamiliar man slowly walking around the house. The man in a black coat seemed to be searching for something. "Lily." Sarah hurried to the living room. "Let's not go outside today. Let's stay here and draw pictures." When night fell and Sarah tried to put Lily to bed, she refused to go. "I want to sleep in your room, not here." "What's wrong? Did you have a scary dream?" Lily shook her head. "Daddy and Grandma are planning something bad. I overheard them." Sarah was disturbed by her daughter's words. "Lily, that's not true. That's just your—" "It is true." Lily's voice grew a little louder. "I found house plans in Daddy's study. It said there was a secret passage." Daddy was looking at the plans while saying perfect on the phone. Sarah tried to calm her daughter, but Lily's serious expression made her feel anxious. "All right. Tonight, we'll sleep together in my room. But tomorrow, we need to talk properly about this." After putting Lily to bed, Sarah called James. However, the call just kept ringing with no answer. As her anxiety grew, she sent James a message, but there was no reply. Sarah picked up her mother's photo and pondered. Had her mother been concerned about James recently? In her mother's belongings, she had found a diary with the mysterious line, "Worried about Jay." Late at night, Sarah's smartphone rang. It was a text message from James, "Coming back early tomorrow morning. Have something important to discuss." Sarah couldn't sleep, remembering Lily's words. Her daughter had a vivid imagination, but there was something different about her recent behavior. It was as if she truly knew something. Sarah got up from the bed and quietly walked around the house. James's study door was usually locked, but tonight it was slightly open. Inside, there were neatly arranged documents on the desk, and nothing seemed unusual at first glance. But when she tried opening the drawers, the bottom drawer, which was normally locked, opened. Inside was an envelope labeled "Life Insurance Documents." With trembling hands, Sarah opened it and checked the contents. A high-value life insurance policy, newly contracted in her name. The beneficiary was James. The contract date was 1 week after her mother's death. "This is," Sarah murmured. She felt a chill on the back of her neck. Lily's warning suddenly seemed very real. As she was about to leave the study, she heard a car engine outside. Sarah carefully peered through a gap in the blinds. A black SUV had stopped in front of the house, and an unfamiliar man got out. He was talking on his mobile phone, seemingly waiting for some signal. Sarah hurried back to her room and lay down next to the sleeping Lily. Her heart was pounding rapidly. Sarah woke from intermittent sleep. The morning light coming through the window was still weak, and the clock showed 5:30. She gazed at Lily's peaceful sleeping face beside her and felt somewhat relieved. However, that peace didn't last long. A faint sound caught her attention, the sound of a car door closing in front of the house. In the early morning silence, The sound resonated strangely loud. Was James back? What was the important talk he had mentioned? The life insurance documents she had found last night flashed through her mind. Just as Sarah was about to get up, Lily's small hand firmly gripped her arm. When Sarah turned, Lily was already awake, staring at her mother with a terrified expression. "Mommy!" Lily's voice was trembling. "We need to escape right now." There was urgency in that small voice. Sarah, confused, stared at her daughter's face. "What? Why?" Lily was clearly trembling with fear. Her small body was stiff with tension, and her eyes were moist with tears. "There's no time. We need to leave the house right now." Sarah was confused. It was clear that her daughter was genuinely frightened. But what were they running from? James, or the suspicious man she saw last night? Either way, Lily's fear was real. Sarah instinctively felt she should trust her daughter. "All right," Sarah decided. "Get dressed quickly, and only take what's necessary." She quickly took a small bag from the closet and put in cash, passports, a mobile phone, and her mother's keepsake locket. Lily hurriedly changed into her clothes and hugged her favorite stuffed animal. "Mommy, hurry," Lily urged anxiously, looking out the window. Footsteps were heard at the front door, the sound of a key turning, and then multiple footsteps. Sarah's heart raced. "Lily, it seems Daddy is back," Sarah said, trying to appear calm. "Do we really need to leave? Shouldn't we talk to Daddy about this?" Lily shook her head vigorously. "No, Daddy and Grandma are trying to kill Mommy. They want the money Grandma left." Sarah gasped at her daughter's words. "Lily, why would you say such a..." "I heard it." Lily's expression was serious. "Daddy was talking to Grandma on the phone. Daddy said, if Sarah is gone, everything becomes mine. And then, we just need to make it look like an accident." The life insurance documents she had seen last night came back to Sarah's mind. A high insurance payout, James as the beneficiary, a contract signed right after her mother's death, and above all, Lily's frightened expression. All of these might not be coincidences. "I understand," Sarah said in a trembling voice. "Let's go down quietly. We'll leave through the back door." The two began quietly descending the stairs. However, James's voice could be heard from the living room. He was talking to someone. Sarah stopped midway on the stairs and listened to the voices. "Is everything ready?" James's voice had an unfamiliar coldness. "I'm counting on you for operating the security system. Timing is crucial." Another man's voice responded. "Understood. I'll activate it as soon as I get the signal." Sarah froze in terror. She quickly pulled Lily's hand and headed toward the back door through the kitchen, holding their belongings. She grabbed the doorknob, but it wouldn't turn. "It won't open." Sarah murmured in panic. "Mommy." Lily's voice echoed softly. "It's locked from the outside." At that moment, the smell of gasoline began to drift around the house. The strong odor of chemicals invaded through the windows. Simultaneously, the house's security system suddenly began to activate. There was no alarm sound, but metal shutters installed on windows and doors started to descend all at once. It was happening. They were trapped. "Lily!" Sarah cried out in fear. She desperately tried to find another exit, but all windows and doors were completely sealed with metal shutters. Sarah was about to fall into panic, but Lily's calm voice brought her back. "Mommy, this way." Lily remained calm. "There's a hidden door behind the pantry." Following Lily's lead, Sarah headed to the kitchen pantry. Behind the grocery shelves was a small door, not noticeable at first glance. Lily unhesitatingly moved the shelf and pulled a hidden handle. A small door opened, revealing a dark passage. "Lily, this is..." Sarah was astonished. "Neither Daddy nor Grandma know about this. I found it," Lily said proudly. "Grandma told me in my dream." Sarah hesitated for a moment. The fear that this might be a trap crossed her mind. But somewhere in the house, she began to hear the sound of fire burning. The smell of smoke was gradually intensifying. She had no choice. "Lily, you go first. I'll follow right behind you." Sarah guided her daughter into the passage. The narrow passage seemed to be an old secret servant's passage. Dust and cobwebs hung from the ceiling, suggesting it hadn't been used for decades. The passage was so narrow that they had to crouch to proceed. "Mommy, are you okay?" Lily turned and asked. She didn't seem afraid, rather. She had an expression full of certainty, as if being guided by something. "I'm fine." Sarah tried to smile, but her heart was pounding with fear. Questions kept surfacing in her mind. Was James really trying to kill her, just for the inheritance? How did Lily know about this passage? After walking for a while, the passage gently sloped downward, continuing underground. Do you know where this leads? Sarah asked. Yes. It comes out under the shed in the garden, Lily answered. Grandma told me. The smell of smoke grew stronger, and behind them came a loud sound like an explosion. The fire seemed to be spreading rapidly. The two hurried through the narrow passage, almost crawling. Finally, a small light appeared at the end of the passage. It was a small door embedded in the basement wall. When Lily pushed the door, it opened with a creak of rusty hinges. Beyond it was the underground space of a shed, a little distance from the house. Hurry! Sarah lifted Lily and rushed up the shed stairs. When they opened the shed door, the fresh morning air greeted them. Looking back, the house was already engulfed in flames. Black smoke rose high into the sky, and the sound of sirens was approaching the neighborhood. Mommy, let's go to Barbara's house, Lily suggested. Barbara was Sarah's close friend who lived 2 houses away. Sarah held Lily tightly. Lily, you saved my life. Lily looked up at her mother's face. There was an adult-like calmness in her eyes. Grandma is watching over us. She knew about Daddy's plan. Sarah trembled at her daughter's words. There was a certainty about them that seemed beyond a child's imagination. The two hurried to Barbara's house. Barbara was just making her morning coffee when she opened the door. There stood Sarah and Lily, soiled with soot, their expressions etched with an indescribable terror. Sarah, what happened? Barbara quickly invited them inside. Barbara, call the police. Sarah's voice was trembling. James set fire to the house. He tried to kill us, though the words were hard to believe. Barbara didn't hesitate to reach for the phone. Outside the window, black smoke was already rising, and the sound of sirens was approaching. By the time the police and fire trucks arrived, the Thompson house was already engulfed in flames. As firefighters battled the fire, officers took statements from Sarah and Lily. Sarah, though confused, insisted that this was not an accidental fire, but a premeditated attempted murder. M.A.A.M. That's a serious allegation, an older detective said. Do you have any evidence? With trembling hands, Sarah took out her mobile phone. Last night, I took pictures of life insurance documents I found in my husband's study. Recently, he took out a high-value policy in my name. The detective looked at the photo and frowned. This alone is not enough. Also, my daughter Lily overheard my husband's conversation. Sarah placed her hand on Lily's shoulder. Lily began speaking in a small voice. Daddy was talking to Grandma on the phone. He said, if Sarah is gone, everything becomes mine. Then he said, the trick is to make it look like an accident. The detective looked at Lily kindly. When and where did you hear this? 3 days ago. Outside Daddy's study, Lily answered. The details accurate. Daddy was talking on the phone and didn't notice me. Then he was looking at the old house plans. He said the security system modification is complete. By the afternoon, the situation at the scene had changed drastically. The fire investigator announced preliminary findings. This is clearly arson. Traces of gasoline were detected around the house. Furthermore, the security system was deliberately modified to allow remote locking of windows and doors from the outside. Officers contacted James's colleagues at work, who testified. We hadn't heard James was going on a business trip. In the evening, James was found at a gas station on the interstate highway and arrested. Documents for identity fraud and a large amount of cash were found in the trunk of his car. I'm innocent, James shouted in the interrogation room. This was all my mother's plan. She coerced me. Margaret Thompson was also arrested at her home. At first, she maintained her composure, but when she learned that James was blaming her, her attitude changed completely. That ungrateful son. I sacrificed everything for him. As the investigation progressed, the full extent of the horrific plan was revealed. James was actually in serious financial trouble. His position at the investment company was just for show, and he had been in debt for many years. Additionally, he had a mistress and was planning to start a new life using the inheritance left by Sarah's mother. It seems he had been living a double life for years. The detective explained to Sarah, after your mother's death, he set his sights on her estate. He seems to have become impatient when you didn't decide what to do with the assets. I wonder if my mother noticed something, Sarah murmured. Surprisingly, Evidence was found in Sarah's mother's diary, showing that she had noticed James's true nature. There was an entry stating, "James approached me about an investment, but I declined after learning his company was in financial trouble." She had been trying to warn Sarah but died suddenly from illness. The trial began 3 months later. The prosecution presented extensive evidence. Numerous planned conversations between James and Margaret were discovered on James's mobile phone. The prosecutor addressed the jury. He modified the house's security system and executed the cold-blooded plan of trapping his wife and daughter and setting fire to the house. The defense tried to question James's mental state, but he suddenly changed strategy and tried to place all responsibility on Margaret. "Mother was manipulating me. I couldn't escape her control." However, this strategy backfired. Margaret was infuriated and testified surprisingly frankly about her years of doting on and controlling her son, as well as her own role in this plan. "I was determined to do anything for my son's happiness. Sarah wasn't worthy of him. I thought if she was gone, James could achieve the success he was meant for." But the most important witness at the trial was Lily, with a composure far beyond her years. She testified about overhearing her father and grandmother's conversation, finding the house plans, and being told about the existence of the secret passage in a dream by Grandma. "Who is this Grandma you're referring to?" the prosecutor asked. "Mommy's mummy," Lily answered simply. "She told me that Daddy was planning something bad." A quiet emotion spread among the jurors. The pure belief and courage of a 6-year-old girl had saved 2 lives. Ultimately, both James and Margaret were found guilty. James was sentenced to 15 years for attempted arson and attempted murder, while Margaret received an 8-year sentence for conspiracy. Outside the courthouse, Sarah held Lily tightly. "You saved our lives." Lily looked up at her mother. "Mommy, it's just the 2 of us now, isn't it?" "No, we have each other," Sarah smiled. "And it seems Grandma is watching over us too." They walked away hand in hand. 6 months after the trial, on an autumn afternoon, Sarah was looking out the window of her new home at the garden, where fallen leaves were dancing. This house, purchased in a small town in the Boston suburbs, was much smaller than their former luxurious mansion, but it was filled with warmth. "Mommy, look." Lily came home from school and showed her a drawing. The teacher said, "My picture will be in the art exhibition." Sarah took her daughter's drawing. It depicted 3 women: Sarah, Lily, and Sarah's mother. "Wonderful, Lily. Grandma would be happy too." Lily smiled. "Mommy, I'm glad I told you to escape that day." "Me too." Sarah embraced her daughter. Since that incident, Lily had shown remarkable resilience. With the help of the psychological counselor, Michael Foster, she had made friends at her new school and was beginning to develop her artistic talents. Sarah herself had also resumed her work at the Oliver Museum. While dealing with her emotional wounds, she was also advancing plans to establish a foundation to support young female artists, using part of the inheritance from her mother. "Have you decided on a name for the new foundation?" Lily asked. "I'm thinking of calling it Reverse Dream. It means a first step toward a new dream," Sarah answered with a smile. Meanwhile, James's days in prison were bleak. He repeatedly applied for sentence reduction, continuing to claim, "It's a false accusation created by my wife's delusions and my daughter's imagination." However, the evidence presented by the prosecution was overwhelming. His colleagues at his company also testified about his years of dishonesty and lies. Most ironic was the collapse of the relationship between James and his mother, Margaret. James's blaming of his mother during the trial had created an irreparable rift between them. Margaret was isolated in prison and was called the most pitiful prisoner. She only repeated to other inmates, "It was for my son." One day, Sarah was doing a final sort of her mother's belongings. Among old notebooks, she found an envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from her mother stating, "James approached me about an investment, but I declined. I found out his company was in financial trouble." The date was 2 weeks before her mother's death. Sarah submitted this letter to the police. This led to an additional investigation into James, and suspicions began to surface regarding her mother's death as well. The cause of death, thought to be natural, was now uncertain. Sarah tried to push away that thought. On Christmas Eve, Sarah and Lily were spending time in front of the fireplace. Lily's psychological counselor, Michael, had also been invited, and the 3 shared a warm evening together. Over the past 6 months, Michael had gradually become part of Sarah and Lily's lives, at first professionally, then as a friend, and now as someone like family. "Mummy," Lily suddenly asked, "what is a real family?" Sarah thought for a moment and answered gently, "It's not about blood ties, but about caring for and protecting each other." Lily nodded, as if understanding, and said, "That's why we were able to become a real family." After thinking a bit more, she continued, "Weren't Grandma and Daddy family? They loved each other, but it wasn't a healthy love." Sarah explained gently, "True love means wishing for the other's freedom and happiness. It's not about using someone for your own desires." Lily looked at Michael and smiled. "What about Michael? Can Michael become part of our family?" The two adults exchanged glances, and Sarah's cheeks turned red. Michael smiled gently and replied, "That's something we'll all talk about someday." Snow had quietly begun falling outside the window. A sense of anticipation for a new year and a new beginning enveloped this small house. Sarah held Lily tightly. "Your courage created our new life." With these words, they were taking a step toward a bright future.